A market skills, you can put the best founder in a shitty market and the market will win. Not because it's tech, it doesn't mean that you have to go through VC funding. There is going to be a moment where you feel like shit, that you're going to disappoint your hundreds of employees. The only people who can survive that mental burden are the ones that actually are obsessed with a problem that they're solving. Either you are really shooting for the moon, or you're much better off not raising or raising a very little and go more of a bootstrap route. Everybody thinks it's easy. And the reality is that they were good and they were lucky. One of the big problem with founders is that you need to know something that the world doesn't know. That's what Silicon Valley calls a secret.
Pascal, you have so much experience. You invested in so many startups, over 140. Tell me a little bit about you.
I've been in tech for 20 years. So you can see some gray hair here a little bit on the sides. My first startup I co-founded was actually a chatbot company 20 years ago. The technology was not what it is today, but it was a very interesting experience. And the second set of experiences I had, I was an executive in a company that invented image search, the search that you have when you are on your iPhone and you're looking for photos. We invented that search function in photos in 2012 after the first machine learning papers about reinforcement learning got published. And I was also one of the first hired executive at a startup called Checker, which is a background check software company in the US, which grew from zero to today doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And so today I'm the founder and CEO of Noosa Labs. Noosa Labs is a holding company that acquires smaller, very profitable bootstrap SaaS businesses. We acquire businesses that are typically doing around 200 to 600K of ARR. And I'm also a venture partner in a VC fund, a Silicon Valley VC fund called Long Journey Ventures. On the one hand, every day I'm looking at a very much smaller, much more stable, profitable software companies. And on the other hand, I'm talking to founders that are building world-changing ideas. And so the discrepancies, it makes for a very varied schedule.
It's pretty exciting to go from one area to another where people want to conquer the world and then where people want to conquer just a small niche within their market.
Absolutely. And I think that the reason why I've gone through that barbell kind of decision is because I believe that there's going to be a barbell decision for all founders. 12 years ago, when I started investing in Silicon Valley, we were investing in almost any idea, thinking that they could be big. Some of them actually ended up being big. I invested in Notion's pre-seed round, invested in a lot of other companies, software or not, that ended up being nothing. And what I realized at the time, and the mistake that we made collectively, is that not because it's tech, it doesn't mean that you have to go through VC funding. Either you are really shooting for the moon, your idea is really big and unique and contrarian in some way, and then you have a chance of creating a world-changing idea, or you're not doing that, you're building something that is interesting, maybe the market is big, but they might be competitors or whatnot, in which case you're much better off either not raising or raising a very little at the beginning and go more of a bootstrap route. And then if you end up in a situation which is much more preferable than you thought, you can always decide to raise later in different ways. You don't have to go through the same pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B kind of motion than we thought was the norm 10 years ago. That's why this bifurcation is both weird. You have to bring the right side of your brain when you're meeting a company, but it's also the reality, I think, of the market today.
I think it's also different founders types are better suited for different approaches. Not everyone wants to be like a star kind of, or going into this direction and being in the spotlight all the time and doing interviews with media and with investors. It's also quite stressful to just search for investors all the time and Series A and Series B, and you never know what will happen if you don't find. So the stakes are really huge with this VC approach. Do you see the differences in founders, in the personality of them between those two directions, bootstrapping and VC founding startups?
The difference is more of a difference in obsession. At the end of the day, if you think about founders that are really successful, that are building like large companies, like hundreds of millions of dollars in or euros in revenue, real unicorns. These people are obsessed with the problems that they are solving. Either it's a life's mission or they really love this idea. They don't want to do something else. I've seen that, and actually that's the reason why I decided not to go down that path when I left Checker, because I realized that I was not somebody who was obsessed with just one idea. If you were telling me I'm going to work to solve one problem for the next 20 years, there are some problems that I would like to solve, but there are very few of them and not many for which there is an opportunity that I think is big enough. The founders that are the most successful in creating kind of these life-changing companies tend to be people that are okay with this is it, this is my life for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And that's a level of obsession with either the problem space that is very important. Because you want, as a founder, you're telling yourself when you're growing and you're hiring and you're fundraising and you have success, you feel that you're going to be excited because you like the momentum. It's true. But the reality is that when you're going down that path, there is going to be a moment where you feel like shit, that you feel like a fraud, that you're going to feel that you're going to disappoint your hundreds of employees or thousands of employees because all their aspirations are going to go to zero. The only people who can survive that much kind of mental burden are the ones that actually are obsessed with a problem that they're solving. When I look at all the founders that I invested in that have built companies that are very meaningful, where the revenue is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, all of them, they are obsessed with a problem. They really love a problem that they're solving. They were meant, in a way, to solve that problem. And that's something that is very, very important when you're in that mindset. Whereas if you think about bootstrap founders, they are typically more engineers. They're also engineers. They're obsessed with this problem. It's an obsession that has a time limit. You're building this social media scheduling software. You love the problem. You love solving the problems of a different API, of the UI, UX, SEO. You love it. But do you want to do it in the next 50 years of your life? No. You like it. If at some point it throws a lot of cash and you just have to work 2 hours a day, you might. But in the meantime, you're going to do something else on the side. I feel that it's a different type of obsession. And the reason why people sell oftentimes is because they actually said, okay, I've had fun. I've made good money. I can take the cash and do something else. And it's completely a normal behavior. The mindset shift is less about the fact that you have a big team and everything. It comes with the territory. But the reality is that if you have a startup idea that can solve world hunger and you're obsessed with that problem since you were 5, you will put up with HR problems because the problem that you want to solve is too big for you to not do it. If there's no problem like that is your calling, then why bother with building a team and raising money and pleasing other people when at the end of the day, you want to have fun and you want to be free, which was not true 20 years ago, but now you can. You can build software fairly quickly. It's a different life purpose and none of them is better than the other. It's just a different one.
Many founders want to earn as much money as fast as possible as a founder. What do you think about that? Is it a recipe for success or disaster?
What goes up very quickly can go down as quickly. Everybody is lured by people that have made money very quickly. I went to a serial acquirer conference a few days ago in London, and there was this guy that built this serial acquirer for radiology companies in France. And in 3 years, they made a bunch of acquisition and he netted for himself probably $100 million. That's a pretty impressive amount of money for 3 years of work. And I was looking at it and I said, what do I feel about it? And maybe it's because I'm 47 and so it's not my first ride in the rodeo, but I don't feel anything about it. In every startup cycle, you have somebody whose startup catches fire very quickly and they're super lucky and they get acquired and they net them for themselves hundreds of millions of dollars. That has happened everywhere. And that's fine. I remember when YouTube launched and within 2 years, we got acquired for $1.6 billion by Google in 2006. Like the number of people that were not in tech that came to me to say, hey, should I be in tech? Did I make a wrong career choice? Everybody thinks it's easy. And the reality is that they were good and they were lucky and it happens. And you can play Euro Millions and be very wealthy also. All these things happen. The reality is that if you look at most founders, especially what I call like the bootstrap part, they have been at it 4 years before they got their first breakout. If you look at Mark Liu, who's a very popular founder on social media, even Peter Levels. Of course, now he has a huge audience. He understands the trick and he's making a very nice amount of money. But the reality is that he's had probably tens of failures before he had his first breakout. I think that especially in the bootstrapped area, when you're not a missionary for the startup, you're going to have to experiment a lot, and your success will be more about your mental toughness and your ability to learn more so than anything else. It's true that sometimes you can have very quick luck and sometimes it will take more time. You don't really control it. I met somebody a year ago that is building a holding of SaaS, a little bit like what I'm doing, but all built in-house and all with crazy growth. And I was seeing his numbers the other day, and his ARR is wild after a year. They're doing 15,000 email outreach a day. They're publishing 1,000 TikTok videos per day for their product. This is wild. Of course, he's growing fast because he's doing things that are, for most people, inhuman. Everybody wants to grow fast and not have to work that hard. And the reality is that it's not how it works. So either you have your break and eventually you succeed and you understand how it works and you can repeat it, or sometimes it takes slower, or you're just going all in and sometimes you can be lucky. But again, it's a matter of skills and luck.
And you cannot scale to 50,000 emails per day if you don't know what you're doing. So he probably tested a lot, he learned a lot, and then when it works, then you can scale it.
Exactly. Yeah. He didn't see that in a LinkedIn post.
Yeah, probably some founders, they feel like they know how marketing works, how entrepreneurship works, because they spend a lot of time in learning from the internet. But a lot of information out there is just to get your attention, not to teach you how to really succeed.
Yeah, it takes time and it's very context specific. It worked in his industry. There are industries or even markets where people don't read their emails. So you can send 15,000 emails to people in some geographies and they don't care. Whereas if you send them WhatsApp messages, they would read all of them. It really depends on your context and you need to adapt to your customers and what they're expecting and their mental preparedness, I would say, versus anything else. So that I'm very convinced with.
If someone is starting a business or building a business just to get money quick, I think he will lose motivation pretty quickly. With the first dive deep, he is expecting to go up. But entrepreneurship business and the startup business, it works like, and you have to go through many downs before you go really up. And you never know how long it will take with the ups. So if you look at startups, how important are the founders, the founder team? How many great businesses did you reject just because you didn't feel that the founders are good enough for you or you cannot work with them?
It's a good question. As an investor, I've said no to probably 1,000 startups, right? And many of them, it was for a variety of reasons. Some of these reasons are stupid and internal and have nothing to do with founder. I mentioned on a blog post on LinkedIn how I passed on deal for reasons that had nothing to do with Alex or the business of deal, and everything to do with some of my own psychology, with other life decisions I was making at the time. And other times you underestimate some dimensions. But what is true is that when you don't have a good relationship with a founder, you're not going to invest most of the time, especially if you're not a professional investor. If you're a professional investor, sometimes you can say, okay, I don't love that person, but it's okay. Like they're not going to cheat on me or whatever. If you're an angel investor, which I was until 2020, you're not going to invest in somebody because the amount of time I've been quite lucky with some of my successes as an investor. And even for those that worked, the amount of craziness that you see as an investor before actually getting your money back, where the founders have a change of heart, like the amount of shenanigans that you can see is so much. Even when you start with people that are good people that are working in good faith, but I don't even imagine what it would be if I was working with people that are crooks. Yeah, if you're a crook, most non-crook people don't want to work with you. That's a fact of life, right? One of the big problem with founders, I think for both bootstrapped and more VC-backed ones, is that you need to know something that the world doesn't know. that's what Silicon Valley calls a secret. Imagine you're building a social media scheduling software today. Very crowded market, tons of competition. How do you stand out? You can build it. It takes time because there are a lot of social media platforms, but you can build it. But the only way to stand out is to have a secret. You know that there are some corners of a market that the world is not understanding correctly, and it is not being served well by the current platforms for reasons that very few people know. Maybe the people that are in that market know, obviously, because they would be your customers and they may have told you. But the reality is that this is why this is going to work. And I think that when you don't see the person knowing that secret, when you don't feel that they have a secret, but it's true that you don't want to invest, even if they could be amazing people, very smart, etc. Sometimes I talk to a founder for half an hour, and after half an hour, I feel I have a better grasp of their business than themselves. In some markets, it can be true. And if that's the case, then I don't want to invest in them, not because I don't think that because I think that they need to learn faster. When I look at Daniel, the founder of Checker, that I not only invested in, but I joined, so I spent 4 years of my life in that industry, what was striking to me from the get-go was his ability to learn with minutia, all these details around the background check process and the compliance laws in the US and all that stuff was astounding. He had a secret and he had an ability to learn. And the combination was a very, very powerful combo. Same with Ivan. I knew him from Notion before he started Notion, but he was obsessed with the idea of a canvas that was broader than the set of tools that Google Doc and others had invented. Something that looked more like the web, which was kind of an infinite canvas, but was structured. And again, this insight, he had thought about it for months and months. He didn't know how to apply it, which market to go after. That's why it took a while for him to go from his first prototype to the successful Notion that started in 2016. It took him 3 years, but he had that vision, and that secret was actually a good one.
Secret sounds like if the competition sees this secret, they can just copy it and outperform you. But I think what you mean is, as a founder, you are so deep into one niche, one industry, one part of the industry, one expertise, and you understand it so well, and you see missing pieces in this industry, and you know how to deal with that. And even if the competition copies the first part, but you are so knowledgeable about your industry, about your niche, that you always evolve faster than the competition can copy you.
I think it's a fair argument. If you think about Snapchat, they had a multiple secret, and some of which got copied by Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, and some are not. I have teenagers at home, and teenagers use Snap for chat every day. That's their main chat app. The secret was the disappearing message. They care about it. It's important for them for whatever reason. And so as a consequence, that's very hard for Mark Zuckerberg to build because his business is based on feeds and on ads that are more permanent. And so that's orthogonal to the industry. The secret is about understanding a problem and a set of customers very, very well. The problem is obviously becomes when you're going after very large markets and the secret gets known very quickly. And that's the problem in some industries. That's why, for example, it's so hard to grow sales tools to billion-dollar markets because the secret gets known very quickly. Salespeople are very aggressive and everybody builds some, I'm building the same thing, but with this one feature. And then at some point you get to what I call the Bermuda Triangle of SaaS, where you have to raise money constantly to grow faster in a more and more competitive market, and you're in the mud because your secret has evaporated and there is no kind of second move, third move, fourth move that you can pull that will allow you to grow out of this situation. And that's a very unfortunate situation. Frankly, you don't really want to be in that category, especially if you're VC funded. If you're a bootstrap founder and you've built a $2 million ARR SaaS businesses, but it's not growing much because there is a lot of competition, it's still a $2 million ARR business. Maybe you can grow profitable. Maybe you can sell some other product to your customers, etc. It's fine. When you've raised 100 million to get to 100 million to 50 million in ARR, the value creation is more, I would say, hard to see.
What are the most important areas besides the founders that determine the success of a startup? For example, business idea, the target audience, or marketing, sales, promotion, the product itself?
I think it's a market. A market kills, like you can put the best founder in a shitty market and the market will win. Whereas you can put a like a good founder in a great market and the market will pull the founder and the founder will look like a genius. I think that the market is the most important. There are some markets which are just very difficult, and no matter how good you are as a founder, you will not be successful.
Could you give some examples?
Sure. I live in France, for example, today. If you're in France, many young parents, they want to start an ed tech company for parents, okay? Because they understand that the offering for young parents is bad, mostly. Yeah. And I mean, I've been a parent, I've been there. But the reality is that young parents, especially when their child starts going to school, they actually don't really want to spend money on this because the kid goes to school, he has grades, and unless they have really bad grades, which really becomes an issue like in middle school and high school, nobody really cares in France or even in Europe or in the US. Whereas, for example, if you go to China, parents care a lot about the intellectual development of their child, even when they are small. And so they would invest a lot of resources to make sure that their kids know how to read, are very good at math, etc., etc. In Europe, you can't make money in that category. No parents care, or at least you can make some amount of money. Maybe you can get to 10, 20K MRR, which is not bad. But the reality is that it's going to be a brutal business to get anywhere. And it's because there is no market for it. The market structure is in such a way that you can be the best founder and have a best idea. It's not going to work. And so that's what I mean by sometimes you can be in what looked from the outset as a big market and yet be crushed by the market. And I would say the same thing in the US, by the way, unless you're targeting the Chinese American demographic. But the Chinese Americans, most of them actually have access to the Chinese stuff, which is exceptional, which is super optimized, which works really well. And why would they take your sugar coated stuff when we can have a real stuff? So yeah, I do think that there are some markets where the market crushes any founder.
If you are offering a solution for a target audience that does not want really to spend money on that, or alternatively, if there is so much competition already and it's so difficult to get into those clients to make them change from the current solution to yours, then everything needs to be on top. Marketing to be perfect. You need a lot of resources and it's like really an uphill battle.
It would work only if you build something. For example, if I take back my example, can I convince some very high achiever parents or wealthy parents to get their kids to do more than just their homework? Yes, I'm sure I could. But then the amount of parents that would be like that is not millions of parents. It's maybe in the thousands. And so if you have 1,000 customers and want to have real revenue, you need to charge them like $1,000 a year each. And that starts to look like a school, right?
Yeah.
That's a thing that you need to understand. You can always find people that are willing to pay more for some super unique insight. But if you're charging them $100 and there's 1,000 of them, it means that you're going after a market of $100,000. It's not worth your time because you're going to spend a lot of time finding these people unless they are all in the same neighborhood, in which case it will be maybe a little bit easier, but it's very rare. That's why I think that you need to have an opportunity size that even in a niche, you need an opportunity set that is probably in the millions, $1 million to $10 million. That's amazing opportunity because it means that there is enough room to create $1 million company or $2 million company without much competition, while also if it's a $10 million market, there's not going to be a VC-backed company that is going to build this thing because it's a $10 million market. VCs are going to say, are you joking? This is too small. So these are great opportunities.
That is a very valuable advice. Many founders struggle to understand what is considered a difficult market, what is considered too small, too big. And especially with software as a service, you can be overrun by Meta, Google, and Amazon for really big markets. And it's very difficult to compete if they put unlimited resources on one problem.
Yeah, I think that the market opportunity size and thinking about it is very important. In the SaaS, the ones that I've met that have been successful are either going after a super small niche that is a small market. They built one of the best products on SEO or whatever. The product is growing organically. They're very profitable. Or they're going after a large market where there's a ton of competition and they have some kind of an edge, a unique positioning, a unique pricing model, unique design, a unique personality on social media, whatever, and they can build a big enough business for themselves. But if you're neither one nor the other, it's difficult.
I made this mistake myself in the beginning of my entrepreneurial career. I thought the smaller the market, the better it is, the less competition I have, and the easier it will become to succeed. But I chose too small market and also declining market. We chose back then domain investors in Germany.
Oh, wow, okay.
And they were always talking about how great it was in the past, that their event had 10, 20 times more participants. It should be some warning signs for us, but we continued building it. And then we realized, okay, it's so difficult to earn money. Then one competitor with a bit better marketing came in, and he got all the market shares almost, and we had to give up.
This situation is difficult. Yeah, you're right.
And it's also in a bigger market. If a strong competitor comes to you, you can pivot and you can choose a niche and you can say, okay, I am a specialized solution within this market for this specific user case, for this specific target audience. But if the market is too little, too small, then it's almost impossible to do that.
Yeah, you need to have a unique positioning. I think that one of the skill sets that founders don't read enough about, and it's true for like VC-backed startups, and it's true for bootstrap startups, but I think it's even more important for bootstrap startup, is the concept of product marketing. Everybody knows about SEO, growth, product, engineering, design, UI, UX. All these areas have been covered by many very smart podcasters, experts, etc., etc. But nobody's talking about product marketing. And product marketing is actually one of the most important things. Product marketing is about positioning. Why is this product good for this audience? All the ICP work, all these value proposition is really about positioning. And that's something that is critical to the success of a startup, especially a bootstrap one, because you don't have a lot of resource. You can't just screw around with ad budgets and all that stuff. You have to be very targeted. So that's one. The second thing is pricing. You need to have a price that is good for you as the maker of a software and good for the buyer. If the real price of a product should be $1,000, but the ability to pay of a customer is $10, you have a problem. So that's two, pricing. And then it's about go-to-market. Go-to-market is where are my customers hanging out? Sometimes they're hanging out on Google. Sometimes they're hanging out on Meta or TikTok. Sometimes they're hanging out through other means. It could be on Discord. It can be on Telegram. I mean, there are many options these days. LinkedIn. And understanding where are these customers hanging out is very important, because that's how you can get more of them. These three dimensions, positioning, pricing, and people in terms of where are they, are very important. Like it's actually in marketing framework, you have a 4 Ps. It's place, product, price, people. And people is about positioning. Price, we talked about. Place is which channel are good channels for this customer segment. And product is a thing that everybody talks about. But the 3 others are actually product marketing.
I really like this approach of blue ocean strategy for positioning, how you can find market niches that are underserved. It makes everything easier. You suddenly need much less effort and resources to acquire those clients because they are looking for this solution and there is no solution like that.
And they feel understood.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me, especially when I did user research for HR customers for Checker, when I was in charge of rebuilding their website as a head of marketing there, is that when I showed them different websites, some of which looked like really ugly, but the copy on the website made people feel that they were home, that it's for you. I know who you are. I understand your problem. That's very important. And the comfort that you can get when you feel you're understood is very high. It's not only the problem set. It's, I understand the problem. It can be, that I work in real estate, and in real estate, we have to integrate with this API. It's the same product, but you're integrated over the API. And all of a sudden, my life is much easier because you understand that I need to integrate with this API. There is no way around it. Otherwise, I need to spend half an hour to an hour on my own getting the information from point A to point B. And that's really the thing that I would like to automate more so than anything else. And so understanding these nuances requires empathy, and customers reward that empathy when it's genuine.
And I think it's also requires some risk tolerance or some bold move to say, okay, as a founder, I want just to focus on this target audience. And I don't care if maybe there are like some other opportunities. Maybe there are some other target audiences that could also want this particular product. But at the end of the day, you can only create a very relevant website and marketing material and a product for one particular target audience or a small group of them, but not like for different types of audiences.
For once, I don't have much to add. I think that you're completely right on that.
Do you have some examples from the startups you interacted with for good or bad positioning?
There is a company that I invested in that was called Point, credit card company. And they initially started building this kind of debit card product with credit card rewards. And it was doing okay. And then COVID hits, and there was this mini recession, and the thing went sideways. And they had raised a lot of money. They had to succeed in a way. They decided, you know what? We know people care about rewards, but the people that want the most rewards are actually not the people that are just professionals. It's the people at the top. So they build the card, which is basically not a card. It's a concierge in a credit card. And so they're going after people that want only 5-star hotels, only the most popular, expensive, hard to get into restaurants, etc., etc. And they started making deals with these restaurants, with these hotels to get discounts, to make sure that if you want to go to Carbone in New York or whatever, you're going to go to Carbone in New York if you have this card. And it works. And it's only positioning. The interesting thing about money and credit card is that like the credit card that you have and the credit card that I have is the same product. But in this case, for positioning and obviously they're delivering the value behind the scene completely changes the behaviors. And people that are very attracted by this value proposition, they flock to this credit card, and the cohorts are crazy. And these are the highest spenders that you can think of. People that are okay to spend $1,000 on a meal without no questions asked. I think this is pure positioning. And they did that because they understood their customers, the different customer psyche, and they realized that they were not going far enough. They tried to be in the middle, and being in the middle is kind of a shitty positioning. They went all in on the rich, saying, you know what? You want the best cards where you can go to all the hotels that you care about, all the restaurants that you care about, and have a travel agent that can help you book whatever you need. This is us. That's a good example for me of success by positioning. Because again, the product is a credit card. It looks more or less the same as the one you have in your pocket right now. In terms of failure, I think that if you look at Notion at the beginning, the reason why it took them a while to get to where they are today, or even what they were when they started to have success, when they launched on Product Hunt and it became a successful product, is that they weren't clear who was their customer. I remember when I invested in the company, there was a lot of debate about it, and Ivan wasn't completely sure. He wanted to build kind of this no-code software builder, app builder, website builder, because all his friends were asking him to build an app, a software, or whatever. He wanted to have these building blocks that allowed people to build these Lego for software, but he's actually talking about a lot these days in podcasts. But the reality is that in 2013-14, there was no real market for no-code software builder. Like people didn't know what to make of it. And on the other hand, you could use Notion as a wiki, but they were not really talking about it. And wiki was a weird market. Like people didn't really believe that wiki would be a real market at some point. And so eventually they created this, and for 3 years they struggled. I mean, Ivan actually has talked about it, that they went to Kyoto and rewrote the product from scratch and repositioned the product. But the reality is that, yeah, for 2 years they had a product, they worked their ass off. It was a beautiful product, but nobody used it because the positioning was not suited for a market, but it was serving. And eventually they rebuilt the product, changed the positioning, and it took off. Positioning matters clearly. And they were early. It's possible that if you think about when Webflow launched, maybe that could have been Webflow, which is a nice company. In the end, you might argue that you're better off being Notion than Webflow, but both outcome would have been great outcome anyway.
Yeah, nowadays I cannot live without Notion. It's so useful for me. I'm glad they pivoted.
Me too.
Let's talk about pricing. What are the most important advice? What are the most common mistakes people do?
Regarding to pricing, sometimes many founders want to charge too little for their software. And that's a common trait of engineers that they say, that's true. Sometimes though, especially when you think about ChatGPT creates a local maximum of pricing for many software products or companies. If you're providing a copy editor for your LinkedIn content or whatever, and you're way more than $20 a month, you better solve many other problems than ChatGPT can solve, because ChatGPT for $20, I can have part of your product and I can use it for many other things. I think that these are, like, on the one hand, you want to find the right pricing. On the other hand, you have to be honest with the reality of alternatives for your customers. But I would give you two different examples from my experience with Noosa that I think are interesting. So for Noosa, we bought a business which was like a pre-employment skills assessment business called Evalart. And Evalart is a good business operating mostly, if not solely, in Latin America. They had two business models. Either you could buy a subscription with a small discount, or you could buy bolsas, which is basically credits. So you buy 10 credits, 20 credits, 50 credits, whatever. The problem of credits is that this is not recurring revenue. And as a consequence, it's less valuable to a market, etc., etc. A year ago, we started to redesign our application to make it more modern. And we said, you know what? When we do that, we're going to change the business model and we're only going to have subscription. You can buy a very small amount of bolsas if you want to use it once so that you don't churn. But for everybody else, you can only have these subscription. And these are going to be annual subscriptions for the most part, unless, again, you're small and you can do small subscription. This has been a bust because in Latin America, for various cultural reasons, they don't trust their vendors and they don't like buying yearly plans. And so they much prefer buying either monthly or they buy bolsas, they use, and then when they need more, they buy more. It's not necessarily about waste. It's more about trust. And we tried for 2.5 months. We got smacked in the face. And tomorrow or next week, we're basically relaunching our pricing with the pricing of before. We're a bit more expensive because we added a lot of new features and the price hasn't changed in 5 years or whatever. But the reality is that we're back to the previous plan or plan types. Am I happy about it? No, that's not what I wanted. But sometimes you realize that if culturally people don't like your pricing model, then it's not going to work and you have to move on. So that's what we did. An example of good pricing is that we have this other business that's in the email personalization space called Centric. What we saw when I bought this business is that we had Walmart paying $49 a month for our products. And I'm like, this is Walmart. This is the largest merchant in the world except for Amazon. And they're paying $50 a month. What am I doing? Like, how can I make money if my biggest customer can pay $50 a month? And we talked to customers and we realized that if you're at Walmart, you don't want to pay, you don't care whether it's 50 or 500. What you care about is whether you can go use a PO process, have different enterprise features that your team is going to use. You don't want to share passwords. You want everybody in your team to be able to log in with their own passwords and have procurement, take care of payment, and don't have to deal with it. You don't want to put your personal credit card on that. You don't want to do expense reports on a monthly basis for $50. It's a waste of your money. It's a waste of Walmart's money, frankly, because the process costs more than $50. And so adding an enterprise plan that was a one-shot annual plan immediately where we go through procurement processes, which in our case take actually very little time, like it's very good understanding of buyer psychology, Like they can pay $2,000. In that case, Walmart would pay maybe $10,000 a year. It's way more than $600. But the reality is that they're very happy. It doesn't matter to them. Like 10,000 or 600 for Walmart, this is not a budget. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything to the life of Walmart. But in one case, we serve their customers well. They don't have to share their password. The person who's buying the product doesn't have to do an expense report every month. He's super happy. Walmart doesn't care. We're happy. Everybody wins. That's the thing. You need to have a pricing that works for you, and that works for your customer, and that adapts to their psychology and their needs. And sometimes you do it right, and sometimes you do it wrong. You'll learn.
That's story of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, exactly.
No one knows what will work usually, but after a while, we figure it out.
Yeah.
I think the danger of not asking enough money, that it slows down your growth and you leave so much out on the table. If you could ask for double of price, in your case, that was extreme example, but even if you can double the price, and this part will be a pure profit, usually, then you can invest more into promotion suddenly and grow. And we also had this problem of asking too little. And then you are stuck. You don't have enough resources to grow. You don't know what to do. Investors, it doesn't look very lucrative for investors, according to the numbers. And also another thing is the perceived value. What do you think about that? If something is cheap, do people assume maybe it's not that good? And if something is a bit more expensive, then maybe they're associated with premium quality?
It can work, but your product needs to deliver.
Yeah.
And if you have a product and a website that look like crap and you're supposedly premium quality, this is not going to fly. The premium quality helps, but it helps if your product delivers on that quality. And again, I think that there's a question of segmentation, and having an expensive price is part of a segmentation. It's part of a positioning in a way. It's going back to my previous point. But in any case, it works if you can match the product offering with the need of a customer. Price is not the only thing that people want. It is for some basic necessities that are considered necessity. If you think about a banana, how much do you want to pay for a banana? Most of the time, it's 10 cents. If you could pay 10 cents, you would, because you don't see necessarily the difference between the best banana in the world.
Yeah.
And I really think that this is about the difference in not only perceived, but actual experience quality that makes a difference.
What about offering your SaaS for free? Maybe as a freemium model, or I've seen some founders, they start for free just to get some feedback, and then they hope that they can convert them to premium users.
Having some free plan, especially for bootstrap founders that don't want to spend time doing sales, makes a lot of sense. Either it's a free trial, a free tier, etc. It's rewarded by SEO in general also, because many people say for free in their search, or even whether it's for ChatGPT or for Google. I do think that it's very valuable, and most of the software we buy tend to have some kind of free trial or free tier. It helps with product-led growth. At the end of the day, you want to remove friction to buy your product as long as it's not a one-off product. If it's a product that you're going to use only once in your life and the value is very high, you're better off having people pay because the value is very high. If the value is very low and the usage is low, then the best thing to do is to do ads, which is all the JPEG to PNG conversion sites do. If your value is recurring, then obviously your recurring usage is better and a recurring business model is better. I've seen people do AppSumo and AppSumo deals. I don't love, personally, when I make acquisitions, I don't love AppSumo businesses. The reason why is that AppSumo customers tend to be very demanding for obviously no more money. The money has already been earned. And the only time I've seen that as an interesting experience is, for example, imagine you're selling a product that is basically a commodity, like a website builder. And you're saying, okay, you know what? You can have your product forever for $100 or $200. It's much cheaper than a Wix for $40 a month forever, right? It's a very good deal. But it only works if you have a product number 2, 3, and 4 that you can sell eventually to some of them, so that you can recoup, for most people, your customer acquisition costs with this one lifetime deal. but you actually make money as a firm with the people that convert to product 2, 3, and 4. Because otherwise, you're out of luck.
Yeah, you have recurring costs for eternity to keep the system running, but you got all the money in the beginning.
Yeah.
And for you as a buyer, it's the worst part.
Yeah, it's the worst part. I have a cost, not a revenue. I want the opposite. I want the revenue, not the cost.
And no flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
With those companies that you buy, which marketing channels did surprise you or perform well?
SEO is obviously a gift that keeps on giving. And we've always liked SEO businesses. I think that I've discovered that some businesses have built really good business on top of YouTube in the SaaS category. I saw a business the other day that was doing like print-on-demand software. Most of our business comes from YouTube. They have different channels. They have affiliates that have also their own channels, and they own the niche in YouTube, and they're doing very significant revenue based on YouTube videos. I would say YouTube is a underappreciated asset.
Yes. YouTube is such a great channel also to build personal connection because there is a human talking to you and you spend more time with those videos. And it stands out probably to all the ocean of AI content out there because you could recognize a video bet easier that is generated with AI than text that is generated with AI.
Irrespective of that, I think that it's about engaging directly with your community and being real, not only in the sense of human, but in the sense of genuine and authentic in what you share. You can fake it. If you're not in a good mood, if you look tired, it's going to show because contrary to TV, you don't have somebody, a makeup artist that is going to take care of everything of your features before you go live on YouTube. I think that this authenticity pays a lot of dividends.
Yes. What other common problems do you see when you try to buy companies, or you also consult some companies on your podcast, but that we haven't mentioned yet?
If you're building a bootstrap SaaS, a smaller SaaS, or an AI agent, whatever it's called these days, you need to be cheap on the things that don't matter. Taking shortcuts in SEO can backfire. Taking too many shortcuts on code and code hygiene can backfire. It creates technical debt. Nobody wants to buy technical debt. There is always a little bit of some, but if you have a lot of it, it's bad. Using frameworks that are popular, that are easy, that are well understood, where it's easy to find somebody who could take care of it, it's great. If you're building a product, we bought this SaaS once, which had a JavaScript front-end and a C# backend. How many developers do you know that are good in C# and good in JavaScript? Not that many.
Wow.
These are not the same people typically in companies. And so that's a problem because it's hard to find a skill set. So you need making sure for things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things that are standard is good. Standard procedures, standard documentation, standard processes, standard payment providers, standard code base, like a code base in languages that is modern. Maybe you want to use Svelte or whatever, but you're using a suite of framework that it's normal to do that. Not, I want this. I like Ruby, but I also want this thing that nobody does, but it's just that I was curious about it. That's a detriment to the valuation of your company because it means that you need to find another unicorn. And who knows if that framework will be valid 5-10 years from now. And obviously, if we're buying, we want to hold for a long time. And so we want to have languages that are going to be supported for a long time, which means that they need to be popular enough and well documented enough. That's a very common mistake of founders and businesses that rely a lot on either their personal brands or their connections to an industry. It's hard. I mean, because it's the person you're buying from probably doesn't have the same connections. This business is going to be difficult. And if you have an earnout, you will not make your earnout.
If you are early stage founder, you should try to let the opportunities open for selling or for getting investors. If you want to do that, it's a good idea to use standard approaches, best practices, standard tools, so that it can be also taken over by other owners or employees. It also makes sense probably if you don't want to sell, but if you just want to continue, maybe you don't want to be all the time working on that yourself as a founder. Maybe you want to have an employee, and it becomes also so much easier to hire someone for a standard programming language or frameworks. And the last question, when would you recommend to a founder to start searching for investors or for buyers?
You're looking for buyers. These days, you have different markets. If you're sometimes doing even a few thousand MRR on Acquire, you can sell your startup there. I think that past a few thousand MRR and below 15 to 18K MRR, the market is not very deep. So I would wait till you reach 150 to 200K ARR to go back on the
yearly
market.
revenue of euros or dollars.
Yeah, exactly. In between, if you're making 4K, 5K a month, you're too expensive for people that want to give something a shot most of the time, but you're too small for other people because you can't really pay somebody to take care of a 4K a month business, or at least you're going to lose money if you are.
Yeah.
That's not very appealing. So your price will be very much not interesting. In the small few, like 0 to 2K MRR, you can sell and acquire. 14K or up, you can also sell and acquire. Obviously, you can also send us an email, go to noosalabs.com and visit us. And then when you're reaching $1 million plus in ARR, you have other types of acquirer. You can have SaaS group, but you also have some more P-backed fund that are interested in $1 million startups. There are some products where, frankly, the best buyer for them is a strategic buyer, like a company that is bigger, like more of a platform in their category. And these relationships need to take time to build. It's a good idea if you want to go down that route, and which is the best one in terms of actually monetizing your business, because a strategic buyer will always pay 2 to 3 times more than a financial buyer. But it takes time to build the relationship, either with a CEO, the head of corp dev, depending on the size of the company, the GM of a business, if it's part of a larger company. And sometimes it takes years to build these relationships. It's not like you call somebody that you've never heard of and that has never heard of you and says, oh, yes, I will buy it. I mean, that never happens. Now, in terms of fundraising, I think that it depends. As soon as you have a deck, you can raise a pre-seed money. And when you hit $1 million ARR, you can raise a Series A. The numbers have changed with AI. There's no entry point anymore. I think that it's more that you feel that you have something that is very unique, very compelling in a large market, and your traction is through the roof. That's what investors are really investing these days, especially if you bootstrap in the past and you're doing 400K in ARR and you're growing 40% year over year. A VC doesn't care. He cares if you're growing triple digits and ideally not with a 1 as the first digit. That's what they really care about.
So many startups nowadays that are using the API of OpenAI. And for me, it feels like a risky bet for investors or for buyers, because you never know what OpenAI will change. Maybe they will increase the price and then suddenly you are not able to operate, or they might bring another alternative within ChatGPT that no one your solution. What do you think about that?
The good thing about this market today is that you have several providers that are competing for the same developers. You can go with Anthropic. You can go with Gemini. You can go with XAI. You can go with OpenAI. And you have all the open source models from Llama to the Chinese models, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that the risk of them limiting the access feels limited. And the reality is that very few players will win the consumer market. For example, Anthropic has probably lost the consumer market, but if they win enterprise developers and code, they're a very, very valuable company and they will be fine with that. I think that it's okay. In terms of them competing with you, yeah, if you're building a product that is basically just one API call and one query type of OpenAI, that's a very precarious situation. But what is hard is building something that has more workflows, more orchestration, something that is niche enough that, like, why would they care? Yes, I think that there you are in a better shape.
Amazing. Could you tell me a little bit about your podcast and about the requirements if someone is interested in selling their startup?
People can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Pascal Levy-Garboua. On X, I'm at 2Pask, 2 as a figure, and Pask, P-A-S-C, an homage to the infamous rapper, Tupac. And on YouTube or podcast, my podcast is called The Indie Board Session. You can also find it under my name, Pascal Levy-Garboua. And our website is noosalabs.com. We acquire very profitable software companies that are doing between 200K, maybe a little bit less, like 180 to 500, 600K of ARR, growing 10 to 40% a year, typically. Very profitable. So beyond the founder's salary, there is not much cost. Obviously, AWS, Stripe, like the typical tax, but not much more. Maybe some SEM. And people can reach out to me on our website, through our contact page, or by email, pascal@noosalabs.com.
Awesome. I will add all those links in the description. Thank you so much, Pascal. It was really
Thanks,
valuable
Will.
and a lot of wisdom.